Hey, what's up, guys? Blaine Duncan here from Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers, joined as always by my brother Austin. What's up, dude? Welcome to episode number 73.
We're back, we're at it, and we're ready to complete this trilogy that we've promised you.
We are.
I feel like this is an episode where we almost need to have like a disclaimer at the beginning, like we are just two guys with opinions. We're brothers that affect each other's opinions. And, it's a little bit different than what a lot of the internet, and I'm sure our comments will tell you.
Well, I think that's the thing that we sort of, I guess, preface people maybe a little bit. But like you said, there should be a little warning at the beginning of this video. Number one, it's a spoiler warning. We get it, spoiler warning. We're going to be talking about Halloween Ends here. And if you haven't seen Halloween Ends, I don't know what you're doing here watching this video. But hey, if you don't want to watch it and you just want to watch us instead, we really appreciate that. But number two is we are huge Halloween Ends fans, and we've mentioned that time and time again on the show. And here we are for this episode. We're going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive on it, and we're going to talk just why we like it so much. And yes, we've done some other shows that have been sort of Halloween Ends centric, but this is our true, like, hey, we're going to talk about this whole thing from start to finish. But before we get into it, I do want to make a quick announcement. Number one, this is going to be, if you're a fan of the show, you're going to be lucky this week. You get 2 episodes this week. And then next week, so it'll be the 19th of July, we're doing our live show. I know we had originally scheduled it, I believe, for the 12th, but we're actually going to do our live show on July 19th. I want to make sure I got that right. July 19th, we're going to be doing our live show. It's going to be at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll make sure we get all that information out to you guys. We'd love to have you guys come on the show, join us. We can chat a little bit. And we're just going to kind of go back to kind of our original idea of how we had when we did our Live 25 show. It's going to be very similar to that. We're just going to be chatting with fans of the show. So we'll make sure that we get those links up and make those available to everybody, whoever wants to be on the show. And we'll love to talk to you, obviously, on the 19th. Can't wait. I love doing live shows. Like they're a little nerve-wracking for us, I guess, in some ways, because it's like, oh man, we don't want to screw this up. And, we're trying to plan these things out. We want to make sure people are showing up and people are watching. But at the end of the day, there's so much fun. And obviously we're going to be talking to fans of the show again on the 19th. And it's going to be cool. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, and I think to date, even with the Hot Wings episode, that was probably like the funniest. Mm-hmm. I think our best live show has still been our first one, Live 25. And what made that special is, of course, you guys popping on and chatting with us, which we're going to do again. And I'm looking forward to seeing some familiar faces and hopefully some new ones.
Right.
But we were out on the road doing a little bit of paranormal investigating, because we do these things too. And it just so happens we might be doing the exact same thing this time around. So it's the closest thing to Live 25 we can get. And Live 25 was one of the best nights of this podcast. So I'm really looking forward to that. And you guys should be too. We'll get all the info out there shortly for you guys.
That's right. Looking forward to seeing everybody and chatting. Live 25, July 19th, just a little over a week or two, week and a half away by the time this episode drops. So looking forward to chatting with you guys. But let's get into it. We're here to talk about Halloween Ends. And whether you like this movie or hate this movie, you're going to hear us talk about it. And this movie is it's so divisive, right? I mean, we see so many people who do love it and so many people who do hate it. And it's really interesting talking to people. Like, the people who really love kills really hate ends. Like, that's what I found. Like, that's probably the most polarizing, those two, right? Where if you're like, oh man, I absolutely loved Halloween Kills, most of those people really dislike Halloween Ends. And then you have people who are like, hey, I thought Halloween, Kills kind of sucked. I kind of liked, 2018, and Ends is just kind of meh, or maybe they like it, or maybe they don't like it. But I feel like Kills is really the polar opposite. So that's what we talked about in episode 72. We talked about Halloween Kills, and we're back to obviously talk about Halloween Ends. So let's get right into this thing. We're going to do this deep dive. I'm going to kind of read the synopsis, and then we're going to talk about it as we go. So here we go. In 2019, Corey Cunningham is babysitting a young boy named Jeremy, who pulls a prank by locking him inside the attic. Just as Jeremy's parents come home, Corey kicks the door open and accidentally knocks Jeremy off the balcony to his death, and Corey is accused of intentionally killing Jeremy. I don't know. I don't think he was intentionally accused, but I think he was accused of killing this kid. This is one of the craziest cold opens I think that I've ever really seen in any movie, especially a Halloween film. And it's interesting because this night takes place. The movie really takes place in two different time periods, because it opens in Halloween night 2019, which is a year after we saw Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills that night. So it's a year later. And what I love about this is that there's this talk that, hey, Jeremy's he's pretty freaked out about all the Michael Myers stuff that happened last Halloween. So, and they're sort of setting the stage that this kid is kind of a scaredy cat and whatever. And the mom is telling Corey all of these things as he's prepping himself to, watch this kid on Halloween night. I really like that they did this, that they didn't just jump ahead to 2022 where the rest of the film takes place, but that they actually went back a year later and sort of built up that story. I like that a lot.
Well, and it begins this theme that we're going to see throughout the movie. One of the big complaints, and we'll get into it further, is that Michael Myers isn't in a lot of the movie. What they're really trying to show is that Michael Myers has, obviously in Kills, we see it a lot, infected Haddonfield. And I believe there's a montage in this time period as well of Officer Hawkins talking about the other murders that are happening in this city. But this is kind of the big stain on Haddonfield since Michael Myers went on his last rampage. And it's almost like the town needs a villain. And Corey Cunningham, unfortunately, through this circumstance, begins that process of becoming Haddonfield's new villain. And yeah, man, it's the craziest cold open. When that kid hits the ground, oof. The sound, I was like, I was silent in the movie theater. I mean, I didn't want to move. It was wild. Yeah. It's a great way to start the movie, though. I mean, it sets the tone pretty high.
Right. Yeah, it is. Like you said, in the theater, especially with the surround sound, and he hits that hardwood floor.
Jesus.
And then he looks over the balcony. Corey looks over the balcony. And it's a very similar shot to what we see in 1978 with Michael looking over the balcony, or that kind of like classic, iconic shot of Michael looking over the balcony. You see Corey. And I should preface what we're talking about here, because and we've mentioned this in the show before, I went into this film knowing very, very little about it. You went into this movie knowing a lot about it. You knew a lot of what was going to happen. I think you already knew sort of how the ending was going to take place, or where it was going to take place, at least. I knew very little about it. But I did know there was something going to be up with this Corey Cunningham character. And I remember seeing that shot, and that was obviously like an Easter egg or a throwback to that classic shot of Michael Myers in 1978. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay, I see where we're going here, right? And then obviously you start to get more and more of that as we go on. But 3 years later, the town of Haddonfield, Illinois is still reeling from the aftermath of Halloween 2018, while Michael Myers has vanished without a trace. Laurie Strode is writing a memoir, having bought a new house and living with her granddaughter Allison, since the latter's mother and Laurie's daughter Karen was slaughtered by Michael. The town has turned on Laurie, blaming her for Michael's rampage and accusing her of encouraging him to kill. So we get this scene where Laurie encounters Sandra at this grocery store.
Like a grocery store.
Yeah, outside the grocery store. And I don't know if it's like supposed to be her daughter or her sister or whoever it is that's with her. And she's like, they're like pushing her in a wheelchair. And she's got, she's all scarred up. Her neck is where you can see where Michael, shoved that light bulb in. So this is the first really scene where we understand, or we know that, Sandra survived 2018, or I'm sorry, Halloween Kills, because that was a pretty graphic scene that we got there when Michael kills her husband and then kind of leaves her for dead. And apparently she survives. But you get this whole interaction between Laurie and Hawkins in the grocery store, and you're again picking up on these sort of like flirtatious vibes between the two.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily care for that so much. I don't think they overdid it. I don't, but I didn't necessarily care for that as quite as much. But yeah, you get this first sort of flash where we see that Lori may be now looked at as somewhat of a villain in this town. And that continues on as, she encounters like the asshole band kids later on, and I think they call her a freak or a psycho or whatever it is they call her. And I think that's a really interesting. So the whole thing is like the pendulum is swung from 2018, where she was kind of looked at as kind of crazy, but wow, she was a victim of Michael Myers, and do you really blame the girl for being the way that she is? To now we fast forward to 2022, and she's like almost, in a way, some people think that she was the one who was really responsible for Michael doing what he did.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it does set up a lot of what we're about to see with like the Allison and Lori relationship that we see kind of in the third act of the film, where, yeah, when I heard I don't know if it's Sandra's daughter or what it is, what the relationship there is, but says something like, "You tempted that man," and it's interesting because the town is always looking for somebody to blame for this. And it's either Lori or Corey Cunningham kind of get the blame in this movie. But going back to the Hawkins thing, I thought I agree with you that I don't think it was overdone in this movie. I think it was a little maybe heavier handed in Halloween Kills. But this movie has Hawkins. He's retired now, and he's almost seen the other side, like life after Michael. He's the first one to really see what that looks like, and he wants Lori to move on. But at this point, we know, through Halloween 2018 that she's not moving on. There's still always a boogeyman in the back of her head.
Right. Yeah, and this Laurie Strode character, we should talk about her as well.
Yeah,
this Laurie Strode character, very different than what we saw in 2018 in Kills. Like, especially with 2018, where we call her the Rambo Lori, right? Where she's like over the top, just constantly vigilant and wanting to make sure that she's watching out for Michael. And this Lori is just sort of like almost at peace in a way. And she's writing this book. She's writing this memoir of her encounters with Michael and surviving that and everything in between. And she's much more grandma-ish in this film, even though she does some things that I would never want my own grandma to say or to do. She is much more like kind of, nurturing, motherly, grandmothery, whatever you want to call it. And she's living in this new house, this kind of, cool old Victorian house. And she's decorating for Halloween. She's, baking pumpkin pies and like all this stuff. Right. So she is different. She's mentally in a different place than she was in 2018 in Halloween Kills, where, now I think she does seem to have almost made peace with this idea, even though she knows Michael is still out there, which is interesting in itself, because in 2018 Michael's locked up, and she's like, their brain is like ravaged by this idea that this dude did what he did to her, and now Michael is free, or she doesn't know where he's at, but she's sort of once again at peace with it. So just kind of a very interesting, to think about that. But meanwhile, Corey is now working at his stepfather's salvage yard, still hated by the suspicious town. On his way home one day, he is taunted by high school bullies and injures himself in the process. While observing, Lori later brings him to the doctor's office where Allison works. The two begin to develop a relationship and attend a Halloween party, but Corey is confronted by Jeremy's mother, leaves the party and runs into the high schoolers. He ends up getting thrown off a bridge, and Corey is dragged into the sewers by an unknown figure. So there's a lot to this that I want to go back to. So once again, we see Corey, he's being bullied. He's being taunted by members of the town. Specifically in this case, he's being taunted by these asshole band kids, which is just ridiculous in my mind, because you don't necessarily think of the band people as like the jerks who are going to be bullying people around. You think of like, jocks and like the varsity football team. And maybe that was just too cliche for them. I don't know. But that is one of my sort of things that I don't like about this film. It's like, really, it's the band kids that are giving this guy a hard time.
I got to pull age card on you here. Class of 2004 versus class of 2016 here for high school. Dude, when I was in high school, it wasn't really the like football kids that were assholes. For me, it was like a lot of the nerdier guy. Like I came in thinking like, oh, these guys are nerds. They're gonna be awesome. They're gonna be really cool. Dicks, all of them. Really? Yeah, dude, it changed. I don't know what happened. I wish, because at least I could have like tussled with the football guys. I wasn't gonna like try to solve equations with the math guys. I don't know. Right. Something changed. Something changed. I'm sure there's still plenty of stereotypical jocks, but I feel like the power shifted somehow. And I don't know. I don't know what happened. Maybe it was the recession, the crisis, the housing crisis. Who knows?
Probably what it was. It was definitely the stock markets and the housing.
Hurricane Katrina. I don't know what happened, but that is it.
Bin Laden.
Bin. There you go. It was Bin Laden, and I don't know. But that being said, my problem with these band kids is they sound like they're straight out of the Bronx.
Yeah,
and I don't understand that. We live so close to Illinois, and been there many times. I was there just a couple months ago. No one talks like these children. And I don't know. That's a big problem that Haddonfield has in all of these movies. Is they either sound like they're down there in Tulsa, or they're talking to like Corey Cunningham. Why don't you come here? Let me cut your hand with a milk jug. I don't know. It's extremely annoying. Nobody talks like that. Right. And I'll get off my soapbox.
I completely agree. I mean, you're totally right. There's very few people you get like deep Southern like twang, or you get this sort of very East Coast New York Boston accent. I don't get it. I mean, even Corey's step parents or stepmom or his mom and his dad. I mean, I don't know. I totally agree. The other thing that I want to mention here is that so we get this scene where Corey he's getting bullied by. Okay, this was number two. Well, two things happen in what I'm going to talk about, where I'm starting to see the signs that Corey Cunningham, in my mind, the first time I'm seeing this film, I'm starting to see the signs that Corey is going to be Michael. Okay, number one, we see that scene where he steps over the ledge or steps over the balcony or looks over the balcony. Number two, we see him working at the salvage yard, and what is he wearing? He's wearing a blue coverall jumpsuit, just like our boy Michael is. Number three, this scene where he gets bullied at the convenience store, he goes in and he buys a jar of chocolate milk. And when he's out, they're picking on him. These kids are picking on him out in the parking lot. And he squeezes this glass jar or this glass bottle of chocolate milk, and it breaks in his hand and it cuts his hand wide open. And I'm like, okay, so just like Michael's hand was, blown to smithereens, same hand, everything. And he ends up going to the doctor and he gets it wrapped. So now I'm like, okay, I see what's going on here. But he does go, Laurie Strode takes him to the hospital or to the doctor's office, whatever it is, the hospital. She's working at, Allison is working at Haddonfield Memorial. And, she gets them all bandaged up, and you see this kind of flirtatious vibe between these two. And, you can see that Allison is kind of into him, and he's sort of like, he doesn't really know if she's into him or, if she's looking at him almost like a monster, like a lot of people in town do, which she's clearly not. So I did like that. Now where are we at here? And then there's this whole scene, a really awesome scene, one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. They go to this Halloween party at this bar, and Allison is wearing this cat outfit. Corey is donning himself the Scarecrow mask. I still need to get the Scarecrow mask. I really, really want to display that because I know you've got one.
I've got it somewhere in this room. That you got me for Christmas.
I got it for him. I don't even have one myself, but I got him one. Whatever, it's fine.
Good brother.
I know. So anyway, so Corey is wearing this scarecrow mask, which we continue to see throughout the film, and we'll get into that a little bit later, more about the scarecrow mask. But he ends up running into Jeremy's mom, and she's like, well, I'm glad you're having fun here tonight. And you can see that she's very, she's hanging out at the bar and drinking by herself or whatever. I think we're supposed to. I don't know if it's like insinuated that Jeremy's parents got divorced or not, but they clearly sold their house later on, we find out, and I don't think they're together. So I don't know. I don't know if they're supposed to be divorced or not.
Well, I think we talked about it in one episode too, that there's a little something going on with Jeremy, mom of Jeremy, and Corey at the beginning there, a little babysitter love sort of weird thing going on there too.
You watch videos laying in bed at night that start like this, right?
Oh my God, I had to think about all the time, actually. I'll probably watch one right after this.
Little babysitter, mom babysitter action. Yeah. So he encounters Jeremy's mother, leaves the party, and he runs into these the same high school kids who he cut his hand, and they end up basically throwing him off this bridge, and Corey gets dragged into this big sewer tunnel. And this is the first time in the film that we actually see Michael when Corey falls off the bridge. You see him for a split second. And a lot of people, if you've not watched this movie a lot, this is the first time you see Michael, and a lot of people don't notice it. But when Corey is laying there on the ground, you actually see Michael coming like out of the darkness, and then he gets dragged back into this sewer tunnel. So I lost my spot here. This is one giant paragraph that I'm trying to break down. He ends up getting thrown off the bridge, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Corey wakes up in the sewers and is confronted by Michael. So this is the first time we get a good look at Michael, who has been living in the sewer for the past 4 years. After holding Corey by the throat, Michael elects to let Corey go. On the way out of the sewers, Corey encounters a homeless man with a knife. In a struggle, Corey stabs the man. Upon realizing what happened, he continues stabbing him. He throws the knife and runs away. Does he? I don't remember. He stabs him more than once. I thought he just stabbed him one time. I think he just stabs him one time.
I think he just stabs him one time because it's kind of they have like a struggle, and he doesn't he kind of like he does like a WWE spin move, and the knife spins and lands in him, does it not?
Yeah, I don't remember, but I don't think I know. I'm almost positive that he doesn't stab him multiple times. I think it's just like, there's this struggle for the knife, and all of a sudden it's like the old man's like, "Huh!"
Yeah,
and it's like he gets stabbed. But whatever. Let's go back to the scene. This sort of struggle between Corey and Michael. So Corey wakes up in the sewer and he's sort of exploring, and there's really weird like carvings on the sewer walls. One of them looks very familiar to like Michael's own mask that you're sort of seeing in the shadows. And Corey is moving about, and all of a sudden here comes this hand. It reaches around, it grabs Corey by the throat, and Michael and Corey have this sort of face-to-face encounter. And there's this weird exchange of energy, thought, telepathic, whatever you want to call it, where they're almost like locked eyes. And like there's this interpretation, I think, at this point that like the evil from Michael is transferring into Corey. But at the same time, there's also this, at least my own interpretation of this, is that Michael sees in Corey maybe himself a little bit, and that Corey is this, hated person by the town. Corey killed somebody. And now there's this sort of understanding maybe from Michael towards Corey, and he lets him go. Corey ends up leaving, and they have this struggle with the old man, and he gets stabbed. What's your thoughts on this whole scene?
This is the toughest part for me to watch now with this movie, because it's probably my least favorite, 10 seconds of the film, because when I watched it initially, what you said is exactly what I thought and what I want this scene to be, where it's more Corey recognizing maybe himself in Michael a little bit more and seeing that perhaps there's more to Michael's story, incorrectly or correctly than what he knew. And now he sees the guy that he was afraid of, that we know at the beginning of the movie, or I guess that because there's kind of this talk between Jeremy and Corey at the beginning talking about Michael Myers, and Corey almost seems a little afraid of Michael Myers as well.
Right.
And, now the town is kind of afraid of Corey, and he looks into the eyes of this person that, maybe there's more to him. And, I guess the darkness is met there. But as you read the book, as you watch it more times, it's very clear that they are trying to insinuate that there is some sort of power shift or some sort of transfer going on there. I don't like the supernatural element. So I try to take it as like literal as possible. I'm glad there wasn't like electricity shooting from one end to the other or some like Jason Goes to Hell slug that comes out of his mouth or anything like that.
Right.
But yeah, it is a really cool scene. But the more I watch it, like that's one where I might check my phone for 10 seconds watching this movie.
Sure. Totally. Yeah, I totally get that. And I think that's probably like when you talk to people about why they don't like this film, I think that's probably one of the big reasons is they don't like that, right? They don't like that there's this weird, unknown, supernatural transfer of, evil and, evil power, whatever you want to call it. And I completely understand and respect that. This goes on to say, so they don't really go into detail on this, but when Corey and Allison are at this party, Corey leaves and there's this exchange between Corey and Allison where they kind of like have a little bit of a lover's quarrel, right? For lack of a better word. Corey's like, basically like, leave me alone. So this goes on to say Corey and Allison make up and go on a dinner date, but Allison's ex, who is a police officer, shows up and harasses them both. This leads Corey to later lure the cop into the sewers where Michael kills him. Allison finds out she was passed over for promotion in favor of a fellow nurse who is having an affair with the doctor. Corey and Michael team up to murder the doctor and nurse at the doctor's home. So again, a ton to unpack here. Let's go back to, so Corey and Allison, they go out on this date, kind of this diner, and there's a Mulaney, there's a cop there who's Doug Mulaney. I think it's Mulaney is their last name. Yeah. Now, I think this is supposed to be one of the kids from Kills who's now an adult as a Mulaney. It's either that or it's the same family, obviously. What I don't like about the character of Doug, and this dude is cool, but what I don't like about the character of Doug is Allison's like freaking 22, 23 years old in this film, and Doug looks like he's fucking like 45. Like, it's just a really bad... I wish they would have had a younger actor. Not to say that as a 22-year-old, she couldn't have dated a 45-year-old, and he doesn't look that old. He probably looks like he's about 40. But
I'm looking it up right now.
Not to say that they couldn't have dated, because people do date, younger or older people like that. But I just wish they would have maybe bridged that age gap a little bit more. And even if he had been like 30, I would have been okay with it. But yeah. So anyway, they go out on this date, and Doug is kind of giving Corey a hard time, and he's like, "Oh, I know who you are," and Corey ends up kind of standing up and defending himself in a way, or kind of gets up in Doug's face, and Doug like backs off, and his cop buddies are like, "Hey, we cool? We got a problem here." They end up leaving, and is this the motorcycle scene? Is this when they drive and the Burn It Down song was playing? I can't remember.
It feels like, so yeah, after they leave the diner, after all that's gone out, because during their talk at the diner, he kind of even mentions like, let's burn it all down or something to that effect. Yeah.
And I love that scene. They're riding on this motorcycle together, and there's a super dark wave song that plays called Burn It Down by Boy Harsher. It's a great song. I love it all the time. It's like, it's on my workout mix. I listen to it. It's on my Halloween mix. I listen to it all the time, but it's this great song. And we see this motorcycle scene, and he ends up dropping Allison off, and then he lures Doug. Basically, he knows Doug is following him, and he lures Doug to the sewer, where he goes in. Doug's looking around, and they end up sort of, together, sort of gang murdering Doug in a way. Corey holds Doug down, and I think that's what, doesn't Corey get behind Doug, and then Michael stabs him? Isn't that what happens?
Yeah. Yep. And Michael's like very shakingly.
Michael's like literally orgasming when he's doing this. Like it's the weirdest. It's the weirdest thing in the world. He's like shaking and like it's like he's like coming to life. It's freaking weird. And that'd be a good question. I would love to, like, if we ever had an opportunity to ask David Gordon Green or even maybe James Jude Courtney, like, what was the intent behind those like shaking movements? And that kind of goes back to that supernatural thing again, where it's like Michael is almost like gaining his power back. Didn't care for that. That's probably one of my least favorite moments in the film, much like your moment of that sort of exchange, that supernatural exchange. I don't like this scene because it's like Michael's just like shaking and it's just like he's gaining his energy back by killing this dude. I didn't like it.
It goes back to the kills. Like the more he kills, the more he transcends. So I don't know. Michael is like a video game character now and needs to kill to gain health. I don't know. It's ridiculous.
God, I hate this movie.
I know.
I love this movie, actually. It's probably one of my favorites of the whole franchise. Anyway, so long story short, they end up killing Doug Mulaney. Allison finds out that this promotion that she was going for goes to Nurse Deb, friend of the show, Nurse Deb, and she ends up getting this. She ends up getting this promotion because she's having an affair with the doctor. So hey, she gets the nod. So Allison and Corey plan to leave Haddonfield because of their past trauma and have an unpleasant encounter with a radio DJ who insults both of them. Corey goes home where his mother is cruel to him and slaps him, so he leaves and sleeps in the house where Jeremy died. All right, once again, let's unpack this all as we go. Willie the Kid. Really liked this character. I thought it was really cool that he was like this DJ in Haddonfield and he was almost like in a way narrating some of this film where he's sort of telling the backstory of what has happened in this town. I thought that was really cool because it's like, if this was a real story and if Haddonfield was a real place and all this nasty, terrible stuff had happened there would be somebody taking advantage of this story and somebody who would be like telling this story, especially as we got close to Halloween, they would be going forward and telling the story. And that's exactly what Willie the Kid is doing. And this is sort of when we also see that the radio tower, which played a part in Halloween Kills and plays a somewhat of a bigger part in Halloween Ends, that this radio tower that always seems to be sort of a beacon of light in the background is now we see it. This is where Willie the Kid works, and Allison and Corey end up going there, and they kind of hang out on the roof, and they have this whole conversation. So then Corey goes home, and he gets slapped in the face by his mom, and he ends up leaving, and he goes and sleeps at Jeremy, the kid who died at the very beginning of the film, at Jeremy's house, which is now empty and abandoned. His parents have moved out. He ends up sleeping on literally the blood stain on the hardwood floor. Very, very strange.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get into what else goes on there, but yeah, it's interesting now going back to this place too. It's almost like in Halloween 1978, where you have this murder at the beginning of the film, then we go back to this abandoned house where everything happened.
Very, very strange. So I'm going to continue on because I think this is probably what you were alluding to. So meanwhile, Lori has become increasingly suspicious of Corey after he begins mimicking Michael's behavior, and she tracks him down to Jeremy's house where she forbids him to leave with Allison. Corey retorts by blaming her for the events that have occurred in Haddonfield and says I'm stroking out here. He says if he cannot have Allison, no one can. So Lori, so here's this scene. Jeremy is laying on the floor and he kind of wakes up to like this thumping noise. There's this thumping noise and he sits up, and Lori is sitting there leaned up against a chair, and she's like thumping in the chair back and forth against the wall to the floor, up against the wall to the floor. And she's holding a paper airplane in her hands. And she's talking to Corey and basically saying, talking about that she essentially sees what she saw in Michael, and all this. Did you just sneeze?
I coughed.
Oh, God bless you anyway.
Thank you.
He continued, they have this conversation and you don't really know what's happening. And Corey, I don't remember if he turns away or what happens, but we have this scene where the shot where he kind of like is not looking at Lori, and then they come back and boom, Lori is gone, and the window is kind of open and the curtains are blowing, and the paper airplane is sitting there. And it's like, So we don't know if Corey was imagining this or if it was real. I think that this was probably real, but I will say I don't know how Lori would have tracked. Like, why would you have ever thought that this kid was sleeping on the floor in the house where he murdered somebody? I don't know. What's your thoughts? Do you think this was a real scene, or do you think this was in Corey's head?
I think this is in Corey's head. I think he's got like this paranoia already of the world. And not to say that Lori isn't definitely thinking that stuff, but he's got this paranoia that he's had since the death of Jeremy. And ever since his interactions with Michael, and now that he's started killing, his mental health is just declining. And this is the first time you see, like, because, sorry, I'm starting another track here. Jeremy dies. It's an accident. He kills the homeless guy. That was on purpose, but it was self-defense. And then he kills Mulaney, Officer Mulaney. He was an asshole and kind of deserved it to a degree. Mm-hmm. So, like, all the killing he's done in the audience's mind, because we do start with Corey as kind of the main character of this movie. In the audience's mind, he hasn't done anything that's like too crazy or too off the cuff. It's been extreme, but you can kind of see where he's coming from with a lot of it. This, I think, is supposed to be our first hint of like, oh no, he is lost. Like, this guy is going down a dark path, and him saying, kind of threatening Lori is a good sign of like, okay, Lori is like our OG character. She's supposed to represent good from the very beginning, all the way back to 1978. So if this character now has set himself up against Lori, I guess we're supposed to view him as bad. That's the way I take that scene, is like the first nod of like, nah, he's wrong.
You kind of changed my mind, because I think you might be right. I think this is probably meant to be almost like Corey's descent into madness in his own way. Like, this is where we as the audience are questioning, is this real or is this not real? But most likely this is in Corey's head. That makes perfect sense. And I like it. The reason I always kind of went to the idea that it was real was because of the paper airplane that's sitting on the floor, and then the windows open and she's gone. So, but I really like that. I do like where you're going with that. And you're probably totally right. On Halloween Day, Corey returns to the sewers and successfully fights Michael for his mask. Let's stop right here, because this is another scene that people have completely lost their shit over watching this film. Corey goes in, and there's this struggle between Corey and Michael, and Corey and Michael. Keep in mind, at this point in time, Corey is like a 21 or 22-year-old dude, right? Michael is supposed to be, 62, 3 at this point? I don't even know how old he's supposed to be.
And he just got his shit beat like 2 years ago to an extreme and shot like 5 times?
Right. So Corey, there's this struggle, and Corey ends up overpowering Michael and slamming him to the ground, which, if you listen to James Jude Courtney tell that story, he actually got a concussion from that scene, because he was kind of like, hey, make it look real, make it look real, make it look real. And, he did. He threw him to the ground really hard, and James Jude Courtney's head actually bounced off the ground, the ground. And he ends up taking his mask. And he says something like, see, you're only a man in a mask, or an old man in a mask, or whatever the hell he says. But then you get this awesome scene where Michael sits up at the end, does his iconic like sit up. And I always thought that was really cool. But I don't know. I mean, I'm a little indifferent to the idea. I don't hate the idea that Corey got his mask away from him. I don't love the idea that Corey got his mask away from him. I think I understand why they had to do it, because you're not going to replicate that mask. Like, I've got my ends mask right up here. You're not going to just create, there you go. You're not just going to create that mask or recreate that mask. He needs to have the Michael Myers mask, right? And there's only one way to do that. That's either kill Michael or take it from him somehow. And that's what they had to do. So I don't love it. I don't hate it, but I understand why they did it, because clearly they're trying to transform Corey Cunningham into Michael Myers. What's your thoughts on that?
He uses, so I've got a couple opinions here, and they're very strong. This is where the Halloween Ends lover in me comes in. First of all, he uses Michael's momentum. Michael is stronger. He uses Michael's momentum against him to swing around and bring Michael down. It's like a wrestling move. If Michael was not stronger in that situation, it wouldn't have worked the way it is. And they're in a slippery sewer. However you want to take it, yes, Michael is eventually overpowered by Corey Cunningham. But if we've learned anything, and I want to go back to Halloween Kills, because you hear a lot of people bitch about that scene. Karen Nelson took Michael's mask in Halloween Kills, or was it Allison that takes it off of him after the stairs scene when Karen eventually is holding it in the street and saying, like, you want your mask, Michael, come get it.
Yeah, I don't even remember now. Yeah, you're right.
Either way, if you're going to bitch about Corey doing it, then at least bitch about the other scene doing it as well, because, one way or another, Michael is injured and he's not able to stop his mask being removed. It doesn't bother me that much. Again, we're dealing with an extremely beaten Michael Myers after the events of Halloween Kills. They do a really good job of showing you that he gets his ass beat at the end of that movie. And yeah, he's not 100% himself, but we're leading to that. We're building to that. We have to earn like the elite Michael, and we're not there yet. We're in the Corey Cunningham phase.
I mean, and that's the thing too. And I also go back to the fact that this isn't like we're talking about Michael in his prime. Like, we didn't see Michael in Halloween 5 get his mask ripped off his face, or Halloween 6 when he's like this badass, brutal, big, brute of a Michael Myers. Like, you didn't see any of that. So to your point, like, Michael's battered and broken, and he's a 60-some-year-old dude. Like, he was taking out a young, strapping 20-some-year-old. Like, probably realistically, Corey was going to overpower Michael. It just is what it is. Anyway, that night, Corey embarks on a rampage, murdering the high schoolers at the salvage yard. In the confusion, Corey's stepfather is also accidentally killed. He then goes on to kill his mother, as well as the DJ and a receptionist at the radio station. So this scene here is this kind of like Corey's rampage, if you will. The brutality in the way that he kills the high school kids is off the charts. Like, when he takes that frickin' the welding torch into that kid's face.
Oh yeah,
man. And it wasn't like the kid was dead. He was like doing it and the kid's mouth is like opening. Like, it was bad. He's got the big plumber's wrench and all that stuff. And then let's talk about the Willie the Kid death scene. So
chef's kiss,
dude. Willie the Kid he's in doing his show, and through the window you see Corey, but looking much like Michael, walk past the window. He ends up killing the receptionist. It's an off-camera kill, which is really too bad, because that is I forget her name, but she's from The Last Drive-In with that one guy, Billy Bob Thornton, not Billy Bob Thornton. I can't think of the guy's name right now, but she's with on his show. And
I gotta look it up now.
It's The Last Drive-In with
Joe Bob Briggs.
Joe Bob Briggs. Thank you.
Who's this?
Joe Bob Briggs. You don't know who Joe Bob Briggs is?
I don't know.
He's got a show on. It's on. I think it's on Shudder now. But he used to have another show on. But he like does like kind of movie reviews and watches old horror movies, and it's actually a lot of fun to watch him. But so he ends up killing Willie the Kid, and one of the most like my favorite death scenes in this entire franchise. He ends up like bashing Willie the Kid's head in, and then his jaw is like falling off, and he takes scissors and cuts his tongue off, and it falls down onto the turntable, and is like, every time
skips.
It skips. And it's just like, it's like flipping. Like his tongue is flipping. Awesome scene. Very, very cool scene.
Probably the best kill in the movie. I love how brutal, and just like what you were saying, the Corey Cunningham Michael Myers is. Even the walk, it's almost like you don that mask and you just become Michael Myers. There were theories that there was going to be a silver shamrock tag on Michael's mask.
Right.
And it would have made sense for this scene, because I don't know do you know if James Jude Courtney portrayed Michael Myers or Corey Cunningham as Michael Myers in these scenes?
I believe, and I don't quote me on this, but I thought that it was actually
Ron Campbell.
Yeah, I thought so, because I thought they had actually made a mask for him, but I could be wrong.
If that is the case, then he absolutely crushed those scenes, because he walks, moves, and acts like Michael Myers in those scenes, and especially love that Willie the Kid death.
For sure. Back at the Strode house, Lori Foe attempts suicide to lure Corey to her, whom she shoots down the stairs. Corey then stabs himself in the neck to frame Lori for his death in front of Allison, who is arriving at the house. Michael suddenly arrives to retrieve his mask and finishes Corey off. After a long struggle, Lori finally kills Michael by slitting both his arms open and slashing his throat. Okay, so once again, a lot to unpack here. So Lori, there's this scene where Lori calls 911 and says, I would like to report a suicide. And she's calling to report her own suicide. And she's like, takes off her necklace, and like she's kind of prepping the house, so to speak. She's got this gun. The camera pulls back, and you see like you hear the gunshot, and you hear this nastiness hit the wall, and you see it hit the wall. And all of a sudden you get this hand that pushes the door open, and it's Corey dressed up as Michael, and she shoots him, and he falls down the stairs. And then she goes down, and she's like, you didn't really believe I was going to kill myself, did you? And they have this whole exchange where, Corey says, once again, if you can't have Allison, no one can, or no one will. And he takes the freaking knife and jams it into his neck. And at that exact moment, as he's sort of like bleeding out, and Lori's like, oh my God, Allison walks in and sees Lori standing over Corey's body. And she's like, what did you do? What did you do? And then she leaves. Well, then Lori sort of like is sort of beside herself. And this is one of my favorite parts of the entire movie. And it like gives me chills thinking about it. It's like there's no sound whatsoever. There's no music, nothing. It's just Lori in the house with Corey, who we think is dead at this point. We later Michael kills him because he kind of comes back to life real quick. But all of a sudden, Lori kind of like realizes, like, there's a window. Is there a window open or something?
I think we see a door move or something to that effect. She's like back against the wall, taking a breather, and something in the background moves, or there's a noise, and it's so well done. I remember looking over at you during that moment and being like, this is what we signed up for. This is what everybody signed up for about to happen.
And so, yeah, you get this whole scene where Lori realizes Michael is still in the house. And here comes Michael. He picks up the mask, and you just see his hand bend down, and he picks it up. And he ends up walking basically over Corey's body, and Corey like jumps up and kind of like sits up, and Michael grabs him and snaps his neck. I think he snaps his neck. And he finishes him off, and it's just like, dude, this is Daddy Michael now. He's back. He's the baddest man, and he puts Corey sort of out of his misery. But then you get this whole struggle scene between Lori and Michael, and she ends up sort of crucifying him in a way to this table that's now owned by Josh Ullman, which is freaking sweet. And she slits his wrists and then ends up cutting his throat, and he bleeds out right there. Really good scene. I wish it would have been longer. I think the struggle scene between Michael and Lori, there was all this buildup, and then like the final fight scene was only like a minute long. And I wish it would have been even like another minute. It would have made me feel a little bit more like there was really this battle back and forth. And there was times when like you see Lori get her hand shoved into the garbage disposal. Yeah, you think it's going to be, she's going to get her hand, ground off. She doesn't, but she ends, and then Allison ends up coming in because Michael takes like one last, tries to get Lori one last time. Yeah, he grabs her throat, and Allison comes in and snaps his arm. And I think that's when they cut his wrist and bleed him out or whatever. But With Michael finally dead, Lori takes his body to the salvage yard, attracting the residents of Haddonfield, who follow her in a procession. She dumps his body into an industrial shredder at Corey's stepfather's scrapyard. In the ensuing days, Allison leaves Haddonfield. Lori finishes her memoir and rediscovers her mutual attraction with Frank Hawkins. So that's the end of the film. But I like the procession scene. I think it's really well done. I still think it's kind of unbelievable, I guess, how they put it together so quickly. Like, this is probably taking place at like 11, 12 o'clock at night on Halloween night. This is really, at least in my opinion, you're thinking it's late at night. And they strap him to the hood of this car. You get the sheriff who's like, the one cop is like, this is not how we do this. This is not how we do this, or whatever he says. And he's like, tonight it is, or I don't remember what he says, but it's like, that's stupid.
I don't mind it. I think it's for a movie about all this stuff, I don't think it's the least believable thing. I enjoy. I like that little interaction where he's like, "No, dude, tonight we're gonna all watch this son of a bitch die." Like,
I think I dislike that actor who plays that character so much. Like, it's just not a believable sheriff at all. He's like the worst sheriff he's the worst sheriff we've ever seen in this entire franchise. Just terrible.
We're gonna do cancel Halloween.
Yeah, just a terrible actor. Not a terrible actor, just not good for this. But so we get this processional. Lori ends up dumping Michael's body into this meat grinder, basically. And he's gone. Michael, you see him get crushed. And then you get this sort of conversation at the end of the film between Hawkins and Lori. And he's like, talking. He brings her some groceries, I think. And they start talking about the cherry blossoms in Japan. And it sounds like they might take this trip together or whatever. And then you get the end of the film where you see all the different rooms in Lori's house. And it's quiet. And then the last shot that you see is Michael's mask sitting on Lori's coffee table. And then the credits start with Austin's favorite song of all time, Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult. And I walked out of the theater for the first time seeing that with a huge smile on my face going, oh my God, that movie was awesome. And everything that I heard about it to this point was completely wrong.
I remember walking out and thinking, like, I knew beat for beat, as soon as Jeremy died in the first scene, I was like, oh, I have read the script for this movie. I'm confirmed, or like I read like the beat by beat analysis, basically what you just read. And I just knew that because I think we watched it like a day late at the theater. And I remember people were already so pissed off. And I remember thinking, like, oh, I'm supposed to hate this, so I'm going to watch this and I'm going to hate it. And, I didn't have a bad time at all. And then you walked out and you did have that big smile on your face. And you said, I got a lot to say. Let's wait till we get to the car. We went back to your car and we just talked about it for an hour. Yeah. And yeah, man, I enjoy this movie a lot. I get why people don't like it. I totally understand, but I also like that it's different than all the movies that we've gotten before. We managed to make a Michael Myers movie, or people are going to be pissed I said that because he's only in a little bit of it, but we've got a Halloween movie that's not Halloween 3 that feels very different and still, in my opinion, is a really good movie. I've heard that a lot too, where it's like, oh, it's not a great Halloween movie, but it's a good horror movie. Okay, but it's still a good Halloween. I don't know. What do you think, man?
I love it. I mean, if we've graded Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills, and we'll grade this one. For me, if I'm giving it an out of 10 score, I'm going to give it an 8. A solid 7.5 to 8. This movie in my mind is a B. A B film, that, like, and I don't mean that it is in reference like this. It's a shitty film. It's like a solid B for me. It's not an A. It's not an A plus. It's a B pushing B plus for me. I love it. I love so much about it. I love the storyline. I love the cinematography. I love the soundtrack and the score and everything in between. I mean, I love it.
I think for me, I gotta agree with you. I believe I put Halloween 2018 as an 8 out of 10 as well. And I think this is right up there with Halloween 2018 for me. I think for me, this feels like so much care was given to the original 1978 movie and trying to wrap up the story from that point. And trying to almost remake Halloween 1978 in front of us through the character of Corey Cunningham. Do I wish they would have put Corey in Halloween 2018 so we could have at least seen that character develop? Yes, 100%. That was a misstep. That being said, it's an 8 out of 10 for me too, dude. It's absolutely one that I'm looking forward to watching here.
Yes.
In just a few months. I can't wait to watch and hear those credits come on of Don't Fear the Reaper, man. That was the icing on the cake for me because that song is my favorite song in the entire world. One day I'm going to have some sort of ink forever in my body of that song, but it ties back to my favorite thing, or one of my two favorite things, Halloween and Halloween. And yeah, man, I just think it's got its problems, but it's a really good movie. And I wish people would give it more of a chance. There's still, to this day, if you go on a Halloween forum at all, there is always, I've seen one this week where somebody was like, just turned on Halloween Ends for the first time in a couple years. What the hell is this bullshit? It's like, what's your real problem? What don't you like that makes you so angry 2 years later? I've said it before and I'll say it again till I die. This is a movie that will age well with time. It will be the Halloween 3 of our generation. 10 years from now, people will go, oh, Halloween Ends. That was a pretty good movie, actually. I was pissed off or whatever, but it's going to age well. It's not going to get worse with time because it's a good overall movie.
I totally agree. I think it will age well over time as well. I think there's going to be plenty of people who will give it a watch years from now, and they'll remember, in their minds they'll be like, oh, I remember how crappy this movie was, and then they'll go back and watch it and they'll be like, oh, maybe it wasn't so bad. And then we'll grow on them, much like Halloween 3 did for a lot of people, myself included. So I completely agree with you. It sounds like we both agree kind of on scores and grades on this thing. And that rounds out the David Gordon Green trilogy. I'm glad we did this. I'm glad we really kind of talked about each one of these films, because we've talked about all of them collectively, individually at other points and times throughout other episodes. But I'm glad we dedicated an episode for every single one of these films, because much like we always say, at the end of the day, these are Halloween films and we love them all. They're like our children and we love them, even if we like this one a little bit more than this one, or this one has better grades than this one. They're all our children. We love them all the same. And that's how we feel about this film as well. So that's going to do it for this episode of Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers. This is episode 73. We've got a bonus episode coming your way later this week. Extra episode is going to be debuting on Friday of this week. So keep an eye out for that. And then obviously next week, Live 25, you'll be seeing, or Live 25, Live 75. We're going to be posting that, some info on that later on our Instagram page. And make sure you guys come and check that out. Join us July 19th, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll get you on the show and we can chat about our favorite franchise in the entire world. That's going to do it. Episode number 73. I'm Blaine Duncan. That is my brother, Austin. And we will see you guys next time.
Be nice in the comments.